Thanks very much. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I want to begin, as we always do, by acknowledging we're on Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis. I'm joined by Jay Shaw, Assistant Chief Emergency Management, to provide you with an update on some of our COVID-related efforts. Once we've provided you with an update and responded to your questions, I'm going to be joined by Mike Ruta, our interim CAO, to provide you with an update on some of the city's ongoing efforts to combat racism in the workplace. And if time permits, I do have a hard stop at 2, but if time permits and there are questions from the media on other topics, I'll obviously do my best to accommodate responses to those questions at that time. I want to take this opportunity to remind Winnipeggers, we see today a test positivity rate of 6.1, continued numbers of infections in our community. I want to just once again encourage Winnipeggers to stay home as much as possible, support local to the extent that you have the means to do so, and when you're out and about, please continue to wash hands, wear a mask, and watch your distance. I'm very happy to see today that some staff who were temporarily laid off are being called back to help with service delivery being provided by our libraries. And I want to thank our library staff for their ongoing efforts to adapt and to be innovative in service delivery during this most unprecedented time. I'll let Jay provide you with the details on that front in a few moments. I also want to touch base briefly on the topic of homelessness and unsheltered Winnipeggers who, in many cases, have become much more visible to many Winnipeggers as a result of the pandemic. I want to take this opportunity to let residents know what they can do if they encounter someone experiencing unsheltered homelessness. People experiencing homelessness face a range of stereotypes and stigmas that don't always reflect reality. And first, I just want to say if it's an emergency situation that you encounter as a Winnipegger, and if it's warranted, please call 911. However, if the individual is not in an emergency situation, I just encourage you to say hi, ask how people are doing. The Main Street Project's outreach team can be called at 204-232-5217 to do a well-being check on individuals that you may be concerned about, to offer information on other resources. Winnipeggers can check with 211 or the Winnipeg Outreach Network Resource Guide. And in the end, I just want to encourage all Winnipeggers to demonstrate the care and compassion that our community is known for. We want everyone in our community to be safe and to be kind to each other and to be well. Thanks very much. Merci and miigwech. Over to you, Jay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon. My name is Jay Shaw. I'm the Assistant Chief of Emergency Management for the City of Winnipeg. Excuse me. Today I am pleased to share that due to the popularity of Winnipeg's public libraries' contactless pickup service, the City of Winnipeg is recalling 91 employees within the Community Services Department who were temporarily laid off last year due to the COVID-19 closures. These additional staff will help improve wait times for library materials and lineups at pickup locations. We've had a tremendous uptake on our contactless pickup service, but we're receiving a number of complaints related to the amount of time it has taken to receive materials. It is anticipated that these employees will be back at work beginning February 8th, 2021. Currently, 10 libraries are open for contactless holds pickup and return services only. The number of open facilities is not anticipated to change with this staff recall. However, we do anticipate being able to expand hours at those facilities in the later half of February. Everyone who is coming to our libraries are reminded to wear a mask, follow signage, and practice physical distancing at all times. Anyone exhibiting COVID-19 symptoms will not be allowed to enter the library branch to pick up their materials. And finally, I will provide a short update on enforcement of public health orders by our bylaw enforcement officers. Since January 19th, they have completed 639 inspections. They issued one warning on January 20th related to large group gatherings at outdoor rinks and not adhering to social distancing and organized games of hockey. The group was advised that games are prohibited, but they are welcome to skate and take shots, just no games. All individuals cooperate with officers. And now we can take your questions.
We'll start with James from the Winnipeg Sun. Good afternoon.
Hey, James.
Hi, James.
With respect to this mandated 14-day quarantine, who's going to be enforcing this in your jurisdiction?
Great question. So the province is responsible for provincial public health orders. We currently have 9 bylaw officers that work in conjunction and under with the province that helps with closed facilities. We are working collaboratively with the province, and if they give us any more information, we'll be sure to share. But I have nothing on the new 14-day.
Yeah, just to follow up, is the province in communication with the city regarding these new COVID variants?
I would say that there's collaboration. Yeah, I speak with members of the emergency management group and several other departments inside the province. But my general comment is that these restrictions have been put in to be able to make us safer. And the variant could potentially be a threat, so we want to make sure that everyone continues to follow what we've been doing thus far, which is washing our hands, watching our distance, staying home when we can, and continue to practice the fundamentals. So these steps are part of that process to get us safer and to keep us moving forward.
Joanne from the Winnipeg Free Press.
How many library staff are still laid off? And how many city staff are still laid off at this point?
So we laid off temporarily, I believe, approximately 600. We're bringing back 91. I'm not exactly sure how many left of the 500 and so are particularly all library staff. Let's see if we can get you that number, Joanne. But yeah, we're happy to bring back the 91. People really love their books, and we want to make sure we get those Holds pickup services working a little bit better and faster for our residents.
Oh, okay. So the 91 are the only ones that have come back so far of that 600 group then?
That's correct.
Okay. And I think, sorry, my sound wasn't great there for a minute. I think you were starting to talk about this, but are there any more steps coming to add any more library services now that the staff are coming back?
Yeah, we're going to look and see what we can do, but let's get the 91 back and assess how fast and how quick we can do the Holds pickup. And then what we'll do is we'll determine what services are available, obviously in conjunction with public health orders. But we want to take a look at that for sure. So right now, no new announcements on any more library services, but let's see what it looks like.
Sean from CBC.
And can you just put a little bit more detail around the backlog of pickup service to understand why you need to bring back the 90+ people? Was it just slow turnaround or like?
Yeah, slow turnaround. I think it's a little bit all of that, Sean. A slow turnaround just because of the amount of volume in terms of the folks that are asking for Holds pickups. Our community services branch has always provided a great service to our residents with the library services, and with the closure, there are many residents that are still accessing and wanting to be able to get their books and their library materials. So what we noticed is that the volume, as people extended into Code Red, and the volume of requests for Holds pickups were increasing. So this is a step to try and get us back to a reasonable amount of time to be able to get those Holds pickups out for folks.
Okay, that's all I have on this topic.
Okay. James, did you have any further COVID questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, Joanne, did you have any further COVID questions?
No, I'm okay with that, thanks.
Okay, so we will then switch out Mr. Shaw and bring in Mr. Ruta. So just give us a moment.
So as Mike gets settled here, I'm pleased our interim CAO, Mike Ruta, is joining us for this portion. Mike will be providing an update on the city's ongoing efforts to combat racism. And I just want to make a few introductory comments before Mike provides his updates. Efforts at the City of Winnipeg to continue to occur in our efforts to combat racism. As elected officials, I think it's incredibly important to acknowledge that systemic racism exists at all levels of government and every department in those governments. And I want to be clear, as I've been in the past, that systemic racism does exist within our municipal government, as I believe it exists in all levels of government in our country. I'm pleased to see today the federal conversation happening right now with Indigenous leaders. I know federal ministers have been in dialogue, and I'm seeing on today's news that they're engaging in very important dialogue and discussions. We have to continue to combat racism in all of its forms. Many steps that we've taken to date include the development and promotion of the Winnipeg Indigenous Accord, mandatory reconciliation training for all of our staff, the new Human Rights Committee of Council, and all of the work that's been undertaken as a result of that committee, including the newcomer welcome and inclusion policy. And in the coming weeks, training will commence on anti-oppression, including anti-racism and cross-cultural competency. We'll continue to look at ways that we can identify and eliminate systemic racism. We want our workforce to be the best that it can be, and we want it to be a welcoming place for all those that choose to be part of it and are served by members of the City of Winnipeg's public service. With that introductory comments, I'll turn it over to Mike for his update. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. As you are likely aware, allegations of racism have continued to surface within our workplace amongst members of our staff. We know racism exists within our organization, and we also know that it presents itself in different ways, and it has been a difficult topic to discuss. While it might be easier for some to continue to deny the existence of racism, we are encouraged that staff are feeling more comfortable bringing their concerns forward so they can be investigated and dealt with. To be clear, we have zero tolerance for displays of conscious bias and or overt racism. If an employee is found to be intentionally targeting anyone within the workplace based on any human rights characteristic, such as their race, gender identity, or sexual orientation, we will act swiftly and there will be consequences. The city has been taking action and is moving the organization forward. In July of 2020, Council directed the Public Service to build on the work being done as part of the newcomer welcome and inclusion policy, specifically asking for all city staff to be provided with training on anti-oppression, including anti-racism and cross-cultural competency. As requested by Council, we are also working with Immigration Partnership Winnipeg, along with other community organizations, in the development of the city's first Anti-Racism Week to coincide with the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination on March 21st, 2021. As interim CAO, I am the chairperson of the committee overseeing this effort. A number of initiatives are being organized for that week in the hopes of starting a citywide conversation exploring ways to identify and eliminate systemic racism. The Public Service will also be launching a two-part workplace cultural assessment over the coming weeks to gain a better understanding about perceptions and attitudes of equality, equity, and inclusion in our workforce by hearing directly from our employees. We will use this information to better tailor training and information to the different segments of our workforce. And finally, we have been working closely with Laurel Harris, an investigator and lawyer from Equitable Solutions, who has specific experience leading human rights complaints, to help us develop training programs for our employees and to help us conduct investigations into specific allegations of racism that have been brought forward by members of our staff, including those that were raised within the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service late last year. Her expertise and guidance over the past number of months has been a tremendous asset to our organization and is helping us move forward. We cannot eradicate the negative impact of racism if we do not acknowledge it exists. This is a journey that will take time. We continue to encourage all our staff to bring issues of racism, discrimination, implicit or explicit bias to our attention. We remain committed to moving forward and improving the workplace for our employees and to foster community trust with the people we serve. We know this will require a tremendous amount of focus and patience, but we know we cannot stand still on this issue, and thank you.
Okay, we will start with James from the Winnipeg Sun.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how many cases how many cases of racism were recorded at the city in 2020?
I don't have that information in front of me, but we can certainly look into that and get back to you.
That's it.
Okay, thank you, James. Joyanne from the Free Press.
So trying to follow along, but I don't have anything written in front of me. There's 2 training programs basically that you're adding now, as well as a workplace cultural assessment. These are the 3 new steps you're doing now?
Maybe I can just start. Our public service provided an update at the most recent Human Rights Committee of Council meeting this week. This is following the direction from Council last year, and as part of the newcomer welcome and inclusion policy action items, they include training on anti-oppression, including anti-racism and cross-cultural competency. And so that training is about to begin citywide in the coming weeks. And this builds on our mandatory reconciliation training. The one thing I will say is I really have to commend my council colleagues for prioritizing and continued focus and support of the public services efforts to combat racism within the workplace. I think it sends a very important signal to our community, but also it is intended to make sure that the city of Winnipeg as a workplace is truly as inclusive as it can be. And we've also are demonstrating and publicly recognizing the reality that systemic racism is something that we need to continue to better address. And so just keep in mind, Joyanne, that when the mandatory reconciliation training was brought in a few years back, it's just a few years ago, was controversial. The anti-oppression training has been universally supported by members of council, and I want to commend them for that leadership.
Did you have a follow-up, Joyanne?
Yeah, and just when you're talking about steps to addressing, allegations of racism, do you have, I guess we're still devising that plan. We don't know what those steps would be. That's what we're working on now?
That's something that absolutely that we're taking instruction from with our consultants and developing a program for all our employees, yes.
I'll just say that would, Joyanne, I mean, that builds on some of the work that in my preamble, I listed off. I mean, that's just a sample of the ongoing efforts. So this is building on and in addition to that.
And we don't have a timeline for that, though, I guess is what I'm getting at this point? Or do we know when we'd expect to make decisions on what's most appropriate for that?
It'll be starting shortly, and we're expecting to move it forward. As mentioned, we do have some training that's going to be provided to our elected officials and also the senior management team during Anti-Racism Week, and for the balance of employees that's currently being developed. But this is a process that not only starts today, but is a continuation. So it is a journey, as I mentioned. It will take time to build this culture in our organization.
I should have mentioned that in my preamble, Joyanne, that all members of council, I'll be taking the training as well. I think we all have something that we can learn through anti-oppression training.
Sean from CBC.
Sorry, Mike, did you say that you do not know how many current complaints have been filed of racism that are active with the City of Winnipeg?
That's correct. I don't have that information in front of me, but again, we can find out the number of active cases for sure.
Okay, so I, like Joyanne, sort of missed the very, very front end of this. There was a reference to a citywide conversation. When you said that, that's a citywide, inside the city of Winnipeg bureaucracy and staff, is that correct? Or is it an external conversation as well?
No, it would be, in a sense, we're going to be starting training for all our employees, and that'll be internalized. But there's also the anti-racism week that is going to be a public event, and a lot of our organizations in the city are being invited to attend, and actually are part of the committee in terms of developing it. Lots of interest in that right now, and we're looking forward to that being brought forward. And that'll start on March 21st, which is the day for elimination of racial discrimination. So some of that will be rolling out through our communications branch shortly.
The ripple effect that we've tried to create with some of our previous work, and I'll just note the Indigenous Accord is really intended to create an incentive and a place to start for organizations and individuals that are looking to do more when it comes to reconciliation. But there's more that we can do, and as Mike is rightfully pointing out, Anti-Racism Week is one additional measure that we're taking to really facilitate that dialogue in the broader community. Of course, our interim CAO's efforts are focused primarily within the workplace, as you would expect, but I would encourage all of you that are following today's press conference, anything you can do to facilitate, as I know you do, that dialogue in the broader community would go a long way.
Joyanne, did you have any further questions on this topic?
No, I'd like the follow-up numbers too, if you can please add me to that request on allegations and reports of racism, but not other than that.
Yeah, everyone, all media on this call, I will ensure get the same response. Thanks.
Okay.
Sean, any further questions on this topic?
No, I don't.
Okay, we're going to let Mike Ruta
Thanks, Mike.
exit, and I will, so give us a second again to do one more transition.
Do you guys have questions for me on other topics?
Yes.
Okay. Sure, I'll stay. I thought I'd just check. I mean, you might say no, so I think it's happened once. Thank you.
All right, we can start into other topics. We'll start with Joyanne, I guess.
Hey, Joanne.
Hello, I just had to be unmuted there. So for the CAO search, you put out a press release on that today that a new company is there for the recruitment now selected. Why has the CAO search taken so long since the last permanent one left in May 2019?
Well, I mean, as we've noted in previous press releases, the initial search was conducted by one recruitment company. We did pause as a result of the multi-year balanced budget, and then, of course, we were then immediately put into dealing with a global pandemic, and so there was a delay as a result of that. In the meantime, what we've been doing, and I want to thank members of the CAO Selection Search Committee for their efforts. We've been going through an RFP process to select a new recruitment company that is as you know, today was announced that we'll be working with going forward. But the primary reason for the delay was as a result of COVID, and I'm pleased that we're continuing those efforts, and we've got a recruitment company now under contract, and looking forward to continuing to move forward. In the meantime, I have to say, our interim CAO has been providing strong and steady leadership for the public service, as you could see today with his leadership to combat racism in the workplace.
And now that recruitment process has begun, the contract's out, when does the city expect to actually fill the position?
That'll be something we'll be discussing with the recruitment company now that we've landed on them. Obviously, the sooner that we can proceed, the better for me. I think Mike's been providing, like I've said, strong, steady leadership. But we'll move as quickly as we can, like, keeping in mind that we want to get the right person for the job. And so it's an important decision that ultimately council will be asked to provide direction on, and want to move as quickly as possible. You'll note, Joanne, that there are some members of council who would like the decision to have been made already, and some who think that we should delay it. So you're not going to make everybody happy, but we're proceeding in a responsible way as quickly as we can.
Do you have any, speaking of which, since you brought it up, do you have any concerns about not having a permanent CAO for so long? Some councillors have said there is concern around that.
I might if we had a different interim CAO, but Mike has been doing a great job. He's been providing really steady leadership during a global pandemic, and in hindsight, to have that steady hand in the CAO's office, I think has been a real benefit for Winnipeggers and for the municipal government. And so, I'd like him to stay on much longer. He's advised many of us that he does when it's the appropriate time. He is wanting to move on to retirement. That day isn't now, thankfully, because he's providing really important leadership. And he's also expressed to me and members of council that he wants to ensure there's an appropriate transition period to work with the new CAO during this term to transition properly. That's something I think the municipal government would benefit from having that, to the extent that the new CAO would like him to be available.
And just refresh my memory for a sec, is there a retirement date that's been announced, or is Mr. Ruta just saying that when there is a new CAO?
Yeah, I mean, he's advised. No, there's no date, so he hasn't announced anything. But he's certainly let me know and others on council know that at the appropriate time he's there to serve for as long as we need him. But he does want to move on at the appropriate time. But so we want to make sure that we get someone in place and there's an appropriate transition times for that business continuity, and that's something we're trying to facilitate right now.
Okay. So when there is a new person in the job, basically.
Yeah, I mean, when the new person is there, I mean, the first conversation will be, how long do you want the current interim CAO to be available and here, providing that transition time, and obviously we'll support the new CAO with that decision. And Mike has said he wants to make sure that business continuity is there. It hasn't always been there, as you know, so I think that's really important. And Mike has expressed that desire to me, and I'm trying to do my best to facilitate that, especially during the pandemic.
I don't know if you're going to set a record in Canada, but certainly doing a fast scan of the last 3 years, Edmonton 13 months, Hamilton 9 months, Toronto 4 months, Winnipeg 2 years and counting, and probably well into 2.5, 3 years without replacing this person. Some people, and they are off council as well as on council, question the sincerity and the rigor that this process has taken. And I really like your personal reaction to that kind of criticism.
Well, you've got one member of council who doesn't think that we should do our jobs during this term.
Off of council, not on council. I'm talking about people in leadership positions that I've spoken to that have said it's very unusual to have a very senior position like that loose and unstructured for as long as this has gone on.
Well, so Sean, I wouldn't characterize the leadership that Mike Ruta has been providing as loose. I think he's been providing strong leadership, and I know I'm certainly grateful for the leadership that he's been providing. My preference would have been to have a more diverse pool of candidates to select from a previous recruitment company. I also wish we weren't in the middle of a global pandemic, and so there was a delay as a result of the pandemic, and we've restarted the process as we indicated in the fall we were doing so, and pleased that we're making progress to announce the recruitment company has been selected. But like I said before, Mike has been providing very strong leadership during a time of tremendous uncertainty. And the sooner that we can identify a prospective candidate for council's decision, the better. And I'm very sincere in wanting to get the best person possible. And we want to make sure that we have a diverse pool of candidates to choose from, and that we get the best person for the job. And so that's not an overnight decision. Long gone are the times where we just appoint our best friends. And so we want to make sure that we're following a process that has the rigor and input of a professional search recruitment company, and we have the most diverse pool of candidates to choose from.
Moving on, unless Joanne wants to finish off with this one.
Yeah, I have a couple more on this topic, if we could. Do you agree, you mentioned it earlier, but with Councillor Klein has pushed the opposite way, we should wait till after the 2022 election, he says, to get a new CAO in the job because the position is, selected by EPC, connected to it under the charter. What do you say to that argument?
Well, I say that all members of council are here for a term of office. There is no entitlement to these positions, and so I don't think anyone should presume that they will be here. I've been open and honest about my intentions not to seek a third mandate, but in the meantime, we have a job to do, and all members of council have a job to do in providing that leadership. And so, so that argument doesn't resonate with me, given the importance of the job. And we've got other members of council who'd like the decision made sooner than later. That resonates more with me. I'd like to make a decision as soon as possible.
Okay. And what's in place, I guess, to avoid the problems that have delayed it so far? We paused once because the initial list of candidates wasn't diverse enough. Then there was a second pause due to the pandemic, but the pandemic's still going on now. So how do we prevent further delays in this?
I'm not anticipating any further delays. The pandemic, we certainly have resigned ourselves to the fact that the new norm is requiring business to operate in a different way, much of it over Zoom and Teams, and we're doing that, and we've adjusted. And so, I'm not anticipating any further delays.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Sean.
No.
You mentioned that you were urging Winnipegs to demonstrate care and compassion that Winnipeg is known for with respect to their interactions with homeless individuals on the street. I'm wondering if you've been canvassed on decisions to allow homeless people to encamp in city bus shelters.
Oh, there's been very active and ongoing dialogue on that topic. I can offer some kind of general comments if you'd like, Sean, or if you have a specific question. But I'll just say, transit shelters in particular are built for temporary reprieve from the element for transit riders. They're not built for overnight accommodation, certainly in the extreme weather that we're facing right now. And so the approach that we've been taking for many years, well before the pandemic and before the cold weather hit, was to support the efforts of End Homelessness Winnipeg and the affordable housing efforts that have been supported by the federal government in particular through the Rapid Housing Initiative, and then the Restart dollars that we earmarked in the most recent budget update. The extreme weather protocols and group that we work with is very active right now. And the most recent update we received from End Homelessness Winnipeg, they provided an email update to members of the legislature, members of parliament, and all members of council yesterday to advise that there was and remains capacity in the shelter system. But I mean, what you see right now is there are less places to go during the day. I know that there's been recent changes from the provincial level that should open up some additional spaces, but our efforts are really focused at trying to better connect people with the services and the support that they need. I think what is different during the pandemic is the visibility of those in need are much more visible for many Winnipeggers, but that need has been there long before the pandemic and continues. And that's why we've worked on, everything from affordable housing to the illicit drug strategy to some of our other efforts to work in a more integrated way with service providers, including the Main Street project.
It is not a reach to say that there has been a conscious decision on behalf of the City of Winnipeg and its property to allow people to remain in situ for multiple hours on any given day, and to allow the consumption of illegal drugs. I would bear witness to that in a court of law multiple times over the last several months. So the question I would ask you is, what part did you play in the decision to allow people to remain in the bus shelters?
I'm sorry, you're going to have to provide a little more detail than that, Sean. You're saying there was a conscious decision with regards to illicit drugs?
Emergency service personnel,
Yeah.
transit workers, and supervisors attend at these places
Yeah.
multiple times in a day.
Yeah.
That's not a
Yeah.
question, that's a statement.
Yeah.
The individuals remain the same for hours and hours and hours. They are in defiance of the public health order. That's not a question. So it therefore becomes a decision to allow people to remain in the bus shelters for those hours. Were you party to that decision, or do you know the reasons why that decision was made?
Sure. I mean, I can tell you what the approach has been. I mean, if you're asking, is there kind of a draconian, heavy-handed approach to forcibly remove people from those premises, the answer is no. The approach from the City of Winnipeg has been, and this is a matter of public record, is to try to work collaboratively with community stakeholders. I'm mentioning the Main Street project because they're one of many van services that are available, to try to connect people with the services that they need. But in terms of illicit drug use, I have been made aware more recently there have been reported incidents. We're hearing it from some of the biz associations of finding needles, and it underscores the need for the illicit drug strategy workforce, or the illicit drug strategy report, I should say, to be meaningfully implemented by all levels of government. The 24/7 safe space money that we made available was part of that, but there's obviously more work and more need in our community to make sure mental health and addiction support are made available for our residents.
Do you feel that, and this could often be an observation of the three levels of government, that it's once again a circumstance where the city is at the bottom of the hill and with the least amount of funding and the least amount of resources, having to cope with what is a problem that's under the jurisdiction of other levels of government? Yeah,
I do appreciate that question, Sean, because we are the last line of defense when it comes to protecting our most vulnerable residents. And when other levels of government have failed to provide adequate supports for mental health and addictions in particular, it's often city services and city personnel that are lending a hand to try to help. It's also city officials like myself that are more readily available to answer these questions to you than I think others have been at other levels of government. And so what we've done, and we were as far as I know, we're the only municipal government in Canada that's taken this approach. We reached out to provincial and federal officials to kickstart the illicit drug strategy work, which for the first time brought all three levels of government together to try to work collaboratively to really amplify all of our efforts. And that work is ongoing. And there have been, to be fair to both the province and the federal government, there have been efforts that have been an action that's happened. It's just not enough, and it's not happening quick enough. And you know that. I mean, your questions recognize that. There's far too many people in our community who have addictions issues that are not being treated in the way that they need. And so municipal government is often that last line of defense because when you call 911, for example, it's city staff that show up. It's city bus shacks right now where we see far too many vulnerable Winnipeggers congregating. And so we're doing the best we can within our jurisdiction, within our means, but we need other levels of government to step up a lot more than they are to date.
One of the conclusions of the Harvard-Bloomberg collaboration with the city of Winnipeg was for teams of professionals to take over some of the load that would come into 911 normally.
Yeah.
It took some time for that report to be published, and now I'm imagining that there's some sort of action moving along towards those goals.
Yeah.
But I was interested to read that the city of Red Deer had looked at these things on its own in 2019 and launched a team like is suggested in the Bloomberg Harvard report 2 weeks ago. How would you react to the swiftness to which one community might come to grips with this problem and come up with a solution that's very similar to what's suggested here, but we appear to be a distance from it?
Look, I think the more municipalities can move in the direction that we're moving, the better. I haven't had an opportunity to speak with the mayor of Red Deer, who I know, and I'll certainly reach out to her to have a conversation about what they're doing so we can learn from each other. But let's also keep in mind many of the services that we're talking about, child and family services and other services that directly relate to the issue at hand, are within provincial jurisdiction, and so we are working as collaboratively as possible with stakeholders who are not within municipal jurisdiction, and that's obviously a part of it. So that could be a question that you may want to raise with other levels of government as well.
And just to wind back to the beginning of this series of questions, and mindful that I did not ask, had a decision been made not about a decision to, as in your words, draconian, and push people out of the shelters. Mm-hmm. Was there a decision to allow them to remain?
The short answer, if you're asking, no. There hasn't been kind of that conscious decision on that particular issue made, but the approach that has been taken for many years has been one that is through a compassionate lens, is try to connect people with the resources and the supports that they need, and that's been consistent whether someone's in a bus shelter or somewhere else in the community. We want to work with community partners, whether it's the Exchange or the Downtown Biz Street Patrols or the Downtown Safety Partnership, or partner agencies like the Main Street Project. We're trying to make sure that we're connecting people with the resources that they need, and so I think if you take a look at if you look at the issues that are affecting our residents through a health lens, and recognize that these are human beings, these are fellow Winnipeggers. You don't want to see resorting to what I would call draconian. And I'm reading into your question, Sean, and I know you aren't suggesting that occur, and you're just asking the question. But the approach has been consistent for many years, and so it's one that these are complex. These are complex issues, and they're also issues that there aren't the quick fixes. I think housing is obviously key. The rapid housing initiative is going to help, but in the meantime, in extreme weather, like when we're talking about tonight and the needs that people have tonight in the cold, it's one of outreach and trying to facilitate connections to the supports that they need.
I think I'm good on this.
Okay,
Joanne,
thanks.
you still there?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
All right. Well, listen. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank you,
your
guys.
time.
Appreciate the questions. Have a good afternoon.